Welcome, everyone.
Hi.
Hi, welcome.
Let's get fast.
Hi, Mark. Thank you for joining. We will wait for the others to join in the next minutes or so. And in about 1 or 2 minutes, we started off together. Hi, Angela. Hi, Endo. Hi, Luke.
Looks like we don't have to look at this anymore.
Hi, Murat.
I think we have almost everyone connected. Josephine, do you want to kick off?
Yeah, happy to. Well, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining our webinar today. I am Josephine, and I'm a pre-sales consultant at Relay42, and I'm happy to be your host today for today's session. So here, a few couple housekeeping notes. As you have all found, there is here the chat and the polls right on your right-hand side of the screen. If you have any questions, please feel free to type them, and I will either answer them directly or keep them for discussions at the end of the session. So now I'm really happy to introduce you to our presenters, who are Roger and Thomas. Roger is our CEO. Roger is our CEO and has a long history in and a passion for enabling companies to deliver great customer experiences across the entire customer journey. With first within strategy, actually with consulting at McKinsey, then in technology, and now since 2019 at Relay42. Thomas is the founder of Relay42 and have started Relay42 in 2010, so over 10 years ago, with a vision of turning data into better customer relationships. He's at the forefront of developing modern-day customer data technology. So without any further ado, let's dive into how to actually generate value from CDPs. And Roger, you have the floor.
Thank you, Josephine. Hi to you all. Welcome. I'm excited to have you here. Hopefully we have a 30, 45 minutes together, which are inspiring, exciting, informative. We have an agenda, so let's go there. Basically, we have 5 steps to make together. Number 1 is we want to tee up the CDP market a bit. So we first want to talk about the forces propelling the CDP market. Secondly, we want to make sense together about what is the CDP market, what is it about, what is happening there. And then we want to go to the meat of the webinar, which is all around generating value with CDPs and what that means for technology. And at the end, we took the opportunity to share our conclusions or beliefs, you could say. So that's the agenda. In between, you can ask questions. In between, we have a poll, and let's just have a bit of fun together. Now, let's go into the first agenda point. So where is the creation of the CDP market coming from? So no doubt, for years, 20, 30 years, there has been exponential growth in data and technology, right? We've seen the introduction of digital, new devices. The amount of data has been huge already over the last year and is growing every year more and more and more. So this creates an incredible big market, the big data market. And on a personal note, even in the troubled year 2020, we saw with our most troubled customers that they were still making increasing use of data. So even in bad times, this trend is continuing. And no doubt, marketing was quick to embrace big data, giving birth to a 100 billion plus MarTech market, covering many subsectors. And one of them is, of course, CDP. So one big trend that we're all riding together is the big data trend. That's not the only force we wanted to highlight briefly up front. The second force is around customer privacy. We've seen all the press releases around customer privacy, ITP policies, the deletion of third-party cookies. True, all true, and all important, and all relevant, and all right. That doesn't mean that paid media goes away, but it does mean that you will need different types of identifiers to activate data in paid media. You will need identifiers related to first-party data. And this second force also gives rise to a significant shift from third-party data to first-party data. And with that, an explosive demand from enterprises in need to become much stronger with first-party data. So these two big forces, big data and the customer privacy, are two forces that are creating and driving the CDP market as such. Now let's dive into that market a little bit more. Thomas.
Yeah, thanks, Rogier. What I wanted to do was dive into the first topic on CDPs itself. What does this trend mean for the CDP market? Because these two trends gave rise to a market that is already growing towards thousands of buyers, dozens of strong players, and then soon to be a multi-billion-dollar size market. But let's be honest, at the same time, I still get asked at least once a week by luckily outsiders of Relay 42. I get asked, what is a CDP? What does it do? And what does it mean? What do they use it for? And I think so far I've heard at least 20 different kind of answers to that by now. So let me start by asking our audience, what do you think is the primary purpose of a CDP? What is it used for? And to do that, we have the poll system on the right. I have to check, I think it's that way if I point. And I'm really curious, how do you see in our audience the CDP market? Is it for you a tool to transport your customer data from A to B? Do you think it's more to analyze your customer data and to create dashboards and visualizations? Or C, campaign management, trigger messages, communicate with your customers? Or is it to orchestrate and integrate your customer journeys better? And I see on the side of my screen the first answers coming in. I'll give you a little bit of time to answer it. We have a quick audience today with the clicking. And I see currently we're leaning towards option D. Do we have any disagreements or others that quickly want to click another one? Yeah, and with more than 70% of the answers in, it feels a little bit like election night. I see that our audience today is leaning towards orchestrating customer journeys, which I think is great to hear, because we're going to focus a bit more on that during the rest of the webinar. At the same time, I see that close to half of you also picked other options. And that's interesting as well, because it means that you have different views on what CDPs are, what they mean. And that's not such a big surprise, because actually for me, that was a little bit expected, because even the experts, the analysts, the larger consulting firms can't fully agree on what the definition of a CDP is, or if they have one, it tends to be rather broad or even a little bit vague. So let's look at a few of those. As a first one, we have the CDP Institute. That's well, CDP, that means to them packaged software that creates a persistent and unified customer database. So to them, it's about customer databases that is accessible to other systems. But, well, that's pretty broad, right? I mean, you could fit a CRM system into that definition. If you look at a second one I found, Forrester has a little bit, let's say, more wordy definition. They still go about centralizing data. They go about making it available to other systems of insight and engagement. So they're moving a bit to the second and third answers on our poll question. And they start to talk about unifying data to make it accessible to marketers without ripping and replacing existing MarTech. So Forrester leans towards CDP as a marketing technology. And yet their large competitor Gartner has a slightly different definition again, because they talk a little bit more about using it for customer modeling, and they move really close to optimizing the timing and targeting of the messages of your offers. And if you take all of these, then actually any of the four options I just gave you in the poll would fit at least one of these definitions. So it's a little bit broad, it's a little bit different, and one of the reasons we think that is the case is because not all CDPs are equal. And essentially, we started thinking about how do you quantify this and qualify it a little bit better. And we came to 4 different types of CDPs. So if you classify the technology by 2 attributes, on the bottom of the chart by the intelligence added to the data, and on the left of the chart by data activation, you can distinguish 4 separate groups of CDPs, each sort of fitting those definitions in a different way. As the first one, we see that you have the data pipe CDP. So that's really the type of technology to transport data from A to B. Some of you picked that definition in the poll, and I think it's a correct answer for at least part of the category. But if you go and look at how the other types of technology differentiate themselves a little bit more, let's move to the bottom right and add some intelligence. We define a second category, or we believe it's could be branded the analytics CDP, which on top of just connecting the data, so instead of being just that database with customer data that every definition picked, it's more, there's also value in being able to analyze the data, being able to visualize it, learning something from your data, which is very much in that analytics category. But you could also move towards the other direction on the activation side. So moving from data pipe, moving up, you would move towards a category that we call automation CDP. So instead of only looking at your data, analyzing it, visualizing it, and taking learnings, you're typically, in this case, looking at how do I trigger specific messages, how do I integrate with the channel. And typically, the automation CDP category is very strongly linked to a specific channel and to the execution in that channel. So lots of technology has, let's say, a background in email and is very strong in the email system, or mobile push is a common origin of these kind of systems as well. And these systems really make it easy to integrate both the CDP part, but the understandings, the data, as well as the execution in the channel. So it becomes sort of a one-stop automation of the communication with the customer. But lastly, we see if you combine both factors, so you start again with that data pipe, you take all the information, but you add both automation and activation into it, you come to a scope that we call the orchestration CDP, which is in a way similar to the automation category, but it's focused on a broader scope, more zoomed out. And typically, orchestration CDP is not as strong on the execution in a specific channel. There's not that historic link with the channels, but instead it works more across the channels on a complete journey scope. And at Relay 42, we really put our emphasis and our focus on being an orchestration CDP. That's the category we play in with. And Rogier, maybe you want to deep dive a little bit more in where we see the value specifically coming out of that orchestration part.
Yeah, thank you, Thomas. So we're not going to talk about organizationally what kinds of teams you get to put in place to get to the value. We're going to talk about use cases. And later on, we're going to talk about what that means for technology. So if you think beyond data in one place, if you think beyond interesting queries, a CDP can be a fantastic building block to transform your company, because it can help you utilize the data real time to personalize the interactions you have with your customer. So, which then means that you can move your company from traditional campaigning to more real-time trigger-based listening and responding to customers. And if you get that right, it's a high-impact game. For many, let's say, important performance metrics, you can achieve double-digit improvements. So what we're going to talk about next is what kind of areas are out there. We believe that there's at least 5 opportunity areas which have been proven by CDPs with many, many use cases across many, many different sectors. And if you look through your eyelashes, you can see it runs from the very initial contact you can have with the prospect customers to the right, to having a full-blown relationship with your existing customers. We'll talk about it in a second. And the underlying insight is the more data you can cover, the more refined you can be, the more personalized you can be, the more impact you have. And the second, let's say, underlying message is the more channels you can touch simultaneously, the more you can orchestrate real time, the higher the impact it gets. So that's 2 of the underlying messages. Let me quickly introduce the 5 areas, and then we go in more depth through them one by one. So first, spend optimization. This is all around differentiate bidding and frequency cap rules to make sure you optimize your marketing spend. So that's for the very first prospect customer. The second area we're going to touch base on, and the page shifts back in a second, is all around increased engagement, which is how can you use trigger-based logic to determine the best sequence of channels, the best message to increase the engagement and get click-through rates up. The third area is all around sales. How can you use data to personalize offers and drive sales up? The fourth area is around CLVs, that is cross and upsell, churn. And the fifth area is the first inroads into service. For example, boosting digital containment, boosting digital automation, using data. So these are the 5 areas that we want to unpack in the next, let's say, 20 minutes or so. Let's go to the first one. So this use case is around spend optimization. How can you leverage data to reach a person, the right person? And as you can see in this example, it can be a high impact game. For this specific client, it was a 50% reduction in marketing spend on their display retargeting. How? By using data to adjust your bidding levels depending on the prospect interactions. For example, you can spend more on customers, prospect customers that look most interesting, and you can spend less on customers that are looking not as interesting, or spend nothing on prospect customers that are already your customers. So that's the gist of this use case. Why is it interesting? Because it's quick and high impact. You only need CRM, website, and of course your activation channels, social media, DSP, search engines, and then you can be up and running in 3, 4, 5, 6 months and basically start grabbing this kind of impact. So message here is there's big impact to gain in spend optimization, and you can get it quite quickly. So that's the first use case. Let's go to the second use case. The second use case is how you can make sure that you interact with your customers with the right content at the right time. And let me wait 1 second before the page is there. So here for this specific customers, it was all around click-through rates, where we had a boost of 40% for their click-through rates, which is of course a pretty clear sign of increased engagement. So what is this use case about? Is how you can use data from last interactions with the brand, e.g. in this case, flight option searched, to automatically create tailored ads from dynamic content, text, images, videos. And with that, use being personal with customers, being real time with customers, and being the more personal you get, the higher click-through rates you get. The reason why we put this use case up is because it's important to have it real time. If you want to engage with customers and be relevant for them, you want to do listening and responding during the dialogue. You want to be listening and responding during, for example, a search that a customer is doing. So here we want to stress it's a great opportunity area, and it's get even greater if you can do this real time. So these were just the first 2 that we wanted to tee up. Thomas has another 2, and I will close off with the last one.
Yeah, thanks, Rogier. Because I think once these first 2 are running well, you're reaching the right customer, you're getting your media optimization right, you're bidding the right amount, you're engaging with the right kind of message. The next step, it's really important to start increasing the actual conversion of those customers. So in the middle, we really look at the conversion rate increase use case. The example here is by the Dutch National Railway, but it's equally applicable to any different kinds of industries. What is typically done in this step of the model is to combine data across several on and offline systems and across devices, because your customer, as most of you probably know, is not only using a desktop device anymore, right? They have a phone, they have a tablet, they can have a smartwatch. They're integrating at many different points. And by integrating all that data about every point of interaction with the customer, and then automatically in real time deciding which offer is most relevant, tailoring it to their current most recent behavior, but also their past behavior, and typically offline interactions, CRM information that you have about them. You can choose for each individual customer what is the most relevant offer that we have at every touch point in that journey. So essentially, once you have done the bidding right, you've reached the right customers, you've increased the engagement by having personal communication, you want to get the offer right. And that right offer, in this case, is an example between choosing, let's say, a subscription for frequent travelers or short-term specific options for offers for occasional travelers, all tailored towards understanding the situation of the customer based on recent behavior and historic product information that you have, CRM information that you have about how they interact. And in this case, the result is a 15% increase in conversion rate, which really multiplies the impact of all your previous cases. So it's really building on top of the rest of the journey that you had before, and it's driving for the part of the journey that you have after. If we go back to the model, and after bringing that customer on board and getting that conversion rate up, it's interesting to start to look at what is the CLV, or customer lifetime value, of these people you're interacting with. And essentially, once you have a customer, you really want to create and maintain a great relationship with them, which again requires being personal, being relevant, but yet being personal and relevant at all times. So it's no longer enough to just select the right offer once when your customer is buying, say, hey, this is the offer for you, and I would like you to buy it. But you want to create a great long-term experience. You want to invest in the customer relationship that you have. The example here is by a large European utility provider. And for them, this meant going much broader than only focusing on new customer acquisition metrics, and put a specific emphasis on staying connected with their customer for the long term. As you can imagine, this applies to utility contracts, but it equally works for financial services, for telecom, for all kinds of longer term interactions you have with a customer. What they did was start to understand the preferences of individual customers and listening to the signals they provide, both about what kind of channel they prefer for each of the interactions, as well as trying to understand how does the situation of my customer develop? Are they still with the right product on our end? Are they still having new developments coming up where we may have more relevant offers, where we may want to change the contract or the product that they use? And as a result of this focus of building a great experience and staying into sort of a continuous conversation with that customer, continuously listening and improving, they managed to increase their average contract value by 4.2%, which is a small percentage number, but you can imagine it's a really large absolute number for most clients, because it's really building on top of that complete customer base coming out of your earlier steps in the journey. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, and I'll tackle the last use case, and then we go to a quick poll as well. So you see that the first 4 use cases are largely about marketing use cases, which is, I think, how we also see the value field for CDP. That's still 70% of the play is in marketing, and 30% in customer experience and customer service. So let's touch base on that last aspect as well, that last valuable area. The use case we wanted to tee up is all around decreasing service cost and creating higher customer experiences by integrating online and offline, but also by containing on online better. So this use case is a 2-step use case. The first step is using AI to predict those customers that are most likely to call and dynamically real-time suggest a resolution at hand for those customers. For example, using the customer behavior that indicates that he or she is moving houses for this retail bank, and then showing online how to change your addresses, for example, like that. These are specific opportunities where you can start increasing digital containment and avoiding digital leakage to calls, for example, which for this retail bank was a high impact area. The second step of this use case is how you can use online information to inform offline. For example, if a certain online resolution cannot be found, if it has something to do with a card fraud or something like that, and you want to have that call to happen, that you use the online search behavior and hand it over to the phone agent that is picking up the phone and understands right away what this customer is talking about. Hence an opportunity to increase customer experiences. This use case, I believe, is interesting for 2 things. Number one is it shows how you can integrate AI, which is one field which is, in our view, in particular part of the CDP wave. And the second reason why this is an interesting use case is because it's about integrating online and offline. And there's still many companies out there that have online and offline channels, whether it's phone or offices or something else. So that's the last use case we want to tee up. And that's the 5 use cases. Now, let's look at them once more all together. As you can see, running from left to right, from initial contact to relationship, there's many high impact areas which work on important KPIs: spend, click-through rates, conversion rate uptakes, average contact value, decrease in service costs, customer experience. And with that, you start mirroring the entire customer lifecycle by using data to become personal and relevant at the moments that it matters most. And we believe that the value from these use cases goes up, as we said in the beginning, from increased coverage of data. The more refined and optimized you can do these kind of use cases, and increased touches of channel, the more you can target retargeting across channels and increase the impact with that. So that's the 5 opportunities that we believe are at least most proven right now in the space, and which we want to share back with you. Before we go to technology, maybe a quick poll on this opportunities of value. If we ask you the question about your own company, where is the current focal point of your data marketing, data strategy at this time? Is it all around customer acquisition, new customer acquisition? Is it all around customer experience and engagement? Is it more about customer journey analytics? Or hey, it's a flux, we're building it, we're designing it, we're thinking it. I'm curious to see some of your answers here.
Well, that's looking better than expected, here. I think it's customer experience and engagement is ahead, but new customer acquisition is close, and thankfully no specific focus is far below that. At the same time, I don't see many answers yet on full customer journey analytics and integrating it.
Yeah, it's interesting. The CDP market is growing, so it's absolutely justified that there's many companies that don't have a specific focus or answer yet. But I'm also excited to see that there's some clear views where to get the value first, whether it's new customer acquisition or customer experience or so. So let's build the bridge to the last section, or one before the last section, Thomas. If we think about value, how should we think about technologies?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting topic that gets woven in here, right? Because we set off and said this is all about value, about how you use CDPs, and we look at the different categories. But obviously, and I was looking at the side of our screen and saw similar questions on this also coming in on the chat. I think all of these ways of generating value with a CDP, the cases, the way clients use it, put demands on the technology side of things. And as you can imagine, from the definition discussion that we had, we see companies struggle comparing CDPs. And often the reason for that is that it's really an apples to oranges kind of comparison. If you try to compare different types of CDPs, different subcategories out of those four we discussed on features, because an analytics CDP is obviously much more feature complete on the analytics, on the slicing and dicing of data than, let's say, an automation CDP. On the other hand, an automation CDP will give you channel execution in a specific channel, which obviously creates a list of features that you can't match up and compare on an orchestration CDP that isn't actually doing the channel execution. So what I've tried to do is still distill the parts out of those cases, look at the key ingredients that are applicable to creating value, and build a model out of that where we think you should be comparing CDPs on. So the first one is pretty easy. Everything we've just said in terms of client cases, of impact and sources of the value is all about creating a seamless journey, personalized to every individual. But that's a topic that's rather easy to put on a PowerPoint slide, but pretty hard to put in practice, right? Because it's pretty all-encompassing. So let me dive a little bit in. What does that mean for the underlying technology? What do you need to create those seamless journeys and to create those individual personalized interactions? Well, as a first ingredient, I think it's key to look at identity management, which is essentially the technology part that figures out who your customers are. As you've heard in the case examples, we believe it's about cases across the journey. So it's about understanding whether someone visiting your website on, let's say, cookie, device ID, or that kind of identifier is the same person as someone picking up the phone and phoning your call center. And obviously, you need very strong identity management technology to figure that out, because if you can't link that data together, you don't understand who the same customer is in the same data set, you can't be servicing them in the full journey. And then to create as seamless a journey as possible, you want to make sure you can support all of the existing technology in your ecosystem. Because if you're leaving out steps of that journey, let's say you're only connecting own channels, but you missed out on digital media, or you're very good at media, but you missed out on your call center, you will not get to that integrated journey where we see that the cases really make each other stronger and generate higher returns. So as a second key requirement, we think you should be looking into agnostic technology that is able to connect to everything in your ecosystem and integrate with the systems you already have. And I saw in our questions someone bringing up a question from a startup perspective, but we see that most clients and most of the example clients we use are on the larger enterprise scale of things. You can imagine, especially in such a context, it's really important that you can build on and work with the technology and the systems that are already in place in a company to get you to value faster, because changing systems takes a lot of time and doesn't add any of the value that we've been discussing. And then once you understand each of your customers, you've identified them, you've connected all your channels, you would say you're in a pretty good place. But now you've created one sort of last big problem, because now you need to start to make millions or even billions of decisions every day on what it is that you tell those customers, how you want to interact with them, what message you want to deliver, what is the right moment, what is the right timing. So you've just generated an explosion of data and possibilities. But we really believe that as the third ingredient, you need AI or deep learning technology to help you automate making those decisions, because that is the easiest way to create real-time interaction, to be listening to your customers and to be responding to their needs at all times. And finally, those three ingredients all need the right technical architecture underneath to build on top. So you need a system, in our view, that is what we call real-time and event-based, which in normal non-technical terms means you want to always be listening to the events of your customers coming in, every trace of data, every interaction that they leave, and at any one moment be updating your calculations, updating your models in real time, and responding and triggering your interactions immediately. So you're always relevant and always there in the same moment as your customer is.
Yeah, I think, Thomas, we reserve some of the questions to at the end, right? Because I see a couple of questions which we may want to comment on.
I saw one that I'm going to scroll up and read because I think it's relevant. Someone asked, will you discuss the different providers today of CDPs and explain the difference between them specifically? We thought it would not be fair to rate providers, because obviously we believe that Relay42 would always be the best one in such a list. So no doubt. So we try to keep it a little bit more generic, but I hope that the technology types and description helps you make the comparison, because the biggest challenge we see is that people compare different subcategories of CDPs in one RFP without first understanding what is the type of technology that they need for the cases that they're trying to roll out. And if you do this by subcategory, by the model that we've shared today, we believe it becomes much more of a fair comparison and easier for you to compare similar technologies on similar attributes. And then obviously we hope that you agree with us that Relay42 is the best answer.
Thanks. And I know that Josephine is saving up some questions for later. So let's go first to some of our conclusions and then go to the final round of questions. So after half an hour of talking, let's wrap up some of the conclusions that we wanted to play back to you as an audience. And thanks for hanging in there. It's not your first hangout of today, I guess. So conclusions. First one, in the beginning, we talked about at least two of the forces propelling the CDP market: data growth, technology growth, customer privacy. And we believe clearly these forces are there to stay. So is the CDP market, right? There's no doubt that big data is still on the rise and will be on the rise for many years to come. And there's no doubt that customer privacy and the shift to first-party data is extremely important, and that there's laws actually making that shift more important and urgent than ever before. So that's the first conclusion we want to play back to you. Second conclusion is a bit more lighter. That is, the CDP market is sorting itself as it seems right now in four types, which was exactly the comment that Thomas was making 2 minutes before, saying, hey, there's many players. We could comment on that. We choose not to do so in this session, but we believe there's at least 4 types coming up. Third message was around value, where we believe that the CDP market has been around for several years right now, and we believe that there's at least proven value via many use cases across many industries in at least these 5 areas that we played back to you, where it still stays a data game. The more data you can add, the more different data you can add, the richer the use case become, the more precise you become with your customers, the more personal, the more impact. Same for channels. If you can orchestrate real-time a interaction in one channel, it's impactful. If you can do that across multiple channels, paid media, own channels and so forth, the impact rises and rises. So that's the third message we want to play back. And the fourth message was around technology, which we just talked about. We believe that this boils down to a couple of demands for technology. One of them having a system that is set up for real-time and event-based. And secondly is that it is easy to integrate with any kind of system out there, because we live in a world of incredible number of systems, legacy systems, bad, good, old, new, advanced systems, and so forth. So these were the, let's say, the 4 broader messages that we wanted to play back. let's go, Josephine, I'm going to hand the word back to you as a moderator, and let's go through as many questions as we can in the time we have left.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much for this great presentation, for having this overview about the CDP market and the value creation possibilities. I hope it was clear for everyone. As it was asked, we will share the recording of the session and the presentation. Let's go back to some of the questions that were asked. I will do this chronologically speaking and from the ones I can directly answer. The first one came from Angela. And Angela asked about the engagement part. When you're a startup company and you try to find out which is the best way to engage for engagement of new customers, how can you test that and find the right way without spending a lot?
I think that's a very good question, and at the same time, of course, a challenge for almost all startup companies. I think if you look at the way we design these kind of use cases, often you want to build them on top of data that's coming out of your current campaigns and interactions with your customers. So you probably already have engagement set up to interact with new customers and how to acquire them. And a very typical question we ask in starting to design use cases is, where do we get it most wrong? Which is an abstract way to say, as an example, I've done a lot of work with one of our telecom clients where they knew the answer to this immediately. We sat in the room and said, where do we get it most wrong? And they said, well, where we're selling subscription plans to those that are locked into a contract, because they can't buy it. They already know it. You can offer them a free iPhone, but they will not buy it. And I think that is one of the methods we use to figure out, without spending a lot more, is to look at your current messaging and figure out what is a large group where this is not the right message, where I can, based on data and personalization, try a different message. And that doesn't mean you have to increase your budget. You're still serving the same amount of contact and media for those customers, but you're starting to test with differentiating a message for different groups and sort of generating learnings on how those groups fit best.
Thanks, Thomas. Very clear answer. I hope, Angela, this was clear to you as well. And if not, please don't hesitate to ask another question. Then we had a few questions from Pedro, and I'm just going to put them all together because I think they all come towards the same area and it would help us to answer them best. So the first one was about the different providers for CDPs, and Thomas, you already answered this question, but then it followed by another one, which is, which are the CDP better prepared for ad tech integration multi-platform, as in Facebook and Google? Would you recommend a tag management system to drive a customer journey's definition? And then how would you develop a lookalike acquisition strategies for your CDP and the ad tech world? I think they're all bound well together.
That's a pretty in-depth one.
The answer is yes.
I think if you look at the CDP integration for AdTech, you're onto the right track, right? Part of our advice is to look at how well can you cover your complete journey with CDP technology. And I think there are different levels, but I would say out of our model, typically it's either the data pipe side of things, but there you would have to do some of your own development work. So you take a simpler tool and you do your own setup with the AdTech channels. Or it's on the orchestration CDP side, where you focus on activation and not focus on a specific channel. Automation CDPs are a little bit of a mixed bag in this area, because if they come from email, they tend to be pretty good at Facebook, but not great at the other ad tech platforms, because they don't integrate well with the cookie-based world of, let's say, Google, DV360, or those kind of platforms. The analytics side of things typically is from a technology perspective not suitable for those kind of connections, because your data is really stored and summarized and rolled up to be efficient to create dashboards. So long answer to say, I think you should be looking in the orchestration direction, but you have some options in the automation category as well. Then I think the second part of your question was whether that should integrate with tag management systems, right, Josephine? Yeah. So I think tag management has a role of its own in the implementation of these technologies. And you see several of the CDP players provide their own tag solutions. Relay42 is also one of those, but our competitors do the same thing. Where tag management really is not a goal in itself, but it's one of the tools or technologies used to efficiently gather at least all the web and mobile data that your CDP needs. So I think, yes, it's part of it, but no, it's not the final solution. It's really a way to implement faster. And the last part was on CDPs for lookalike.
For CDP and the ad tech world.
So that's a good example of one of the cases we presented, right? Typically, CDPs play a role, especially in that spend optimization case, for the very left part, which I think is mirrored for you, that side of our model. What we see is that lookalike targeting on your customer profiles can be very effective if you have high data volumes yourself, or alternatively, if your groups are pretty small and you don't have the data yourself. We see that many on the ad tech side deliver their own lookalike modeling, right? Facebook does it, Google does this, Nexus, several of the publishers offer this kind of technology. And in that way, it can really help you expand the horizon on the left side of our model in getting the bidding right for your early customers.
Pedro, I hope we have answered your questions. And if you still have questions, don't hesitate to keep asking them or see how we can continue this conversation. Now we still have...
one second, Josephine. I saw a question on the checklist for CDP. That's probably not a question we can answer live, but we have these kind of materials just at hand, which we can share offline if you reach out to us.
Yeah,
I just the question there. Sorry, go ahead.
Yes, regarding the question from Odd Morton, I'm sorry for pronunciation, but I hope it was not too bad. For those in the market for buying a marketing automation platform, would we use what would the use of Relay 42 mean that we wouldn't need a map, as well as should we use Relay 42 to make the map perform better?
Yeah, that's very much. It depends. We have a lot of echo from one of you.
Thomas, the line is cutting a little bit on my side. Is it cutting for you as well, Jorge?
No, it was echoing for me.
Ah.
But now it's back to normal. So marketing automation is, for some clients, it is indeed can be replaced by part of the CDP use cases. But I think if you're an advanced user of marketing automation, and especially if it's in service interactions, push channels, those kind of technologies, it's a good match to use an orchestration CDP on top of a strong marketing automation platform, where your data and your full journey scope technology makes your marketing automation perform better, as Odd described it. And I think if you are looking at a much simpler marketing automation implementation, then the overlap with CDP is quite big, and some customers go without a marketing automation. So it depends on the complexity of your situation.
To be answered on the side, I think we are running through the questions that were asked on the chat. Do you have any other questions or any other topics from the chat we would like to pick up? And otherwise, I think we still...
Or if you believe we missed one, just repost it.
Do we have any common vendors that our customers are using?
On the marketing automation side, yeah, the typical big names. So we see a lot of Adobe Campaign Manager, Oracle. We see some Salesforce / ExactTarget. IBM Unica is popular with the customers, but I think that's nothing new for most of you. Those are the biggest names in the space. I think we also see sometimes with more localized, the smaller players typically coming out of email and growing into marketing automation, but then it's typically country based. So that those four are the most common.
Thank you. Pedro, you wanted us to repeat something, but I'm not sure what it was, so maybe we can specify. Would we recommend a free CDP software? From Pedro.
I don't know many of those. I do know that we sometimes see clients coming in from a sort of build your own kind of situation. Yeah, or obviously as a CDP vendor, or typical advice to think before you build, because I think it's more cost effective to acquire an existing solution than to build your own, and then to spend your building time more on integrating it well, on building, let's say, company specific machine learning or targeting models or those kind of things, and not to go build core CDP infrastructure, because there's so much choice in the market that I think it's the better way to buy one. But if you really want free, then we do see sometimes clients go and sort of construct their own.
Thanks. So 2 questions coming up. First from Tristan, or Tristan, depending where Tristan is from. Which EMS would we recommend?
Ooh. It's hard to pick one, right? We see some clients being very successful with Salesforce Marketing Cloud as their email solution. We see IBM Unica used in that space. We see Silverpop. We see a lot of them, and then we see even more localized players, because specifically in email, there are quite a lot of companies that are specific to one country or market because they have the best deliverability there. So I wouldn't dare to say this is the one and only right one. And I think it also doesn't really matter, right? Because the whole purpose of CDP technology is to be technology agnostic and to plug into any of your email system that you select. And then obviously behind closed doors, we sometimes complain about some of them being easier to work with than others. But it's not a clear one winner that I would say I would recommend.
Thanks, Thomas, for your answer. And Pedro, your last question is about recommendations for banking journeys.
Yeah, can I tee up the answer and then you guys chip in? So obviously financial services is close to our heart because they are so rich on data and so rich on touch points, channels, and so forth. So that's for us the perfect area to work. All the opportunity areas we presented are live with our financial services clients, including banks. So for, I think, every client, the media spend one is always they start with, then they have the money in the box and any investment is basically earned back. Recently, we had fantastic breakthrough results with the mortgage journey, where we picked it up from, let's say, the very first online touch up to the appointment booking, which is another case of, let's say, orchestrating the entire journey multi-channel up to the offline channel. And that's interesting, right? Because mortgages is a big field for banks. So if you get it right there and you start earning money, it goes really quickly. So that's every bank that likes to work with us, we always say, let's at least put mortgages on the list because it's such an interesting area to work on together. I'm not sure, Thomas, if you have something to elaborate.
Yeah, I think mortgages and then on acquisition is the absolute natural starting case for many banks. Credit cards is another that we see a lot of clients do. Yeah. The 5th example here gave in our cases list on services is done by our larger retail bank customer, but it's a bit more advanced. Typically, it's done a little bit later in the implementation process. And I think, Pedro, we have your email address. There are quite a few interesting banking case studies on our site that we can share with you that are done by other banks on how they implemented this. Because as Rogier said, banking and financial services is one of the most natural industries for implementing this kind of tech.
Any other questions coming up? Oh, great. Yes, I think I've rarely seen so much activity on the questions. Really great. And I'm really glad everybody is so interactive. If you have more questions coming up in the few coming days or even the next hour, don't hesitate to contact us directly, and we'll be really happy to give you more information, use cases, case studies that we have in mind. Yes, and I think we are reaching the end of this webinar. Thank you again, Jorge and Thomas, for this great presentations, for enlightening us about all those topics. And thanks everyone for participating very actively in this webinar.
Yeah, thank you very much. On my behalf, I hope we convinced you or at least inspired you to think value if you think CDP and not only think technology. And secondly, that we believe this is truly a high impact game. So don't shoot low, shoot high, because there's a lot to gain together. Okay. Thanks, Tom. Ciao.
Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.